A man sits in a cramped, noisy workshop in Corinth, his hands stained with dark leather dye and stiff from hours of labor, for an evacuation, an escape plan. A divine airlift where God finally pulls the ripcord, parts the physical clouds. Heaven is not a place somewhere above the clouds. It is the overlapping dimension of God's reality. It is right here. It is pressing aggressively against the fabric of our physical world. The disciples do not see a distant God traveling 1,000,000 miles to reach them. They see the king radiating the Parousia that was already there. The royal presence was always standing on the mountain. It was just hidden under human skin. It was veiled in Jewish flesh. For one brief, terrifying second, the veil drops. The glory burns. The dirt becomes a throne room. And then, just as quickly, the heavy curtain is pulled shut. The blinding light vanishes. The freezing wind returns. The ancient prophets are gone. The sharp rocks look like ordinary rocks again. Jesus looks like a tired, dusty rabbi again. They are left sitting in the dark. Just the three men, the heavy silence, and the mountain air. But the terror in their chests remains, because now they know the truth about the gap between heaven and earth. There is no gap. There is no distance. But if heaven is not light years away, if the dimension of God is pressing directly against our own, if the emperor has never actually left the room, then what exactly happens at the end of the age and takes his people away from a burning, ruined world? We are taught to look at the future as a departure lounge. The end of the age is not an invasion from the outside. It is an emergence from the inside. When we picture the final chapters of human history, we usually imagine a cosmic wrecking ball. We picture a fiery destruction where God finally burns down the infected house and pulls his favorite children from the wreckage. We envision a departure. But the word parousia forces us to completely reimagine the mechanics of the apocalypse. The Greek word apocalypsis, from which we get apocalypse, does not mean total destruction. It means an unveiling. It means taking a heavy, dark theater curtain and tearing it violently down the middle. When the true emperor is finally revealed, he does not have to travel through the stars to reach us. He simply has to lift the veil that keeps our eyes from seeing the overlapping dimension of his kingdom. Two sheets of glass pressed tightly against one another. They occupy the exact same frame. They share the exact same borders. A watcher on one side might only see a reflection in the glass. They might think the other side is 1,000,000 miles away, but the distance is a millimeter. The distance is a single breath. The fire of that day is not the fire of a demolition crew. We are trained to view the present world as a sinking ship that we are simply waiting to abandon. It is the fire of a rising sun burning off the morning fog, revealing the mountain that was standing there the entire time. The present world is not a sinking ship meant to be abandoned in the cold, dark waters of history. It is a seed meant to be buried in the soil, cracked open by the weight of time, and resurrected into a garden. This changes every assumption we have about waiting. We are not sitting in a sterile waiting room beneath a silent sky. We are standing in the middle of a grand temple, where the heavy tapestries are already starting to fray at the edges. We can almost feel the cold wind coming through the fabric. We can almost smell the incense bleeding through the threads. The presence, the ousia alongside us, is already occupying the room. The Parousia is not a future ticket out of the dirt. It is a future guarantee that the dirt will be made holy. Our physical bodies, the rocky soil we walk on, the heavy timber of our homes, the work of our calloused hands, none of it is destined for a cosmic incinerator. Heaven and earth are not moving further apart. They are rushing toward a final collision. The overlapping dimension of heaven will fully crash into the dimension of earth. We build our entire theology around the idea of distance. We assume God is far away, fusing them back together in a violent rush of glory. This is what the early church understood. This is why they could stand in the Roman marketplace, under the shadow of Caesar's statues, and refuse to blink. They knew the true king was already holding the ground beneath their feet. But the detail that completely changes how we grieve, how we stand beside a fresh grave in the hard earth, is found in the tears of the king himself. A king walking down a dusty road into a village where the wailing has already started. Dust coats the sandals of the rabbi. He walks into the village of Bethany. The sun beats down on the Judean hills. The wailing of professional mourners cuts through the heavy afternoon heat. They beat their chests. They throw dirt on their heads. A man is dead. 4 days dead. 2 sisters are broken. The crowd is crying. A massive, rough-hewn stone sits over the mouth of a dark cave. The smell of decay presses against the limestone. Jesus stops in the dirt. He weeps. Tears cut wet tracks through the dust on his face. He walks toward the tomb. He orders the stone rolled away. Martha protests. Her voice shakes. Seated on a throne, light years out of reach. And one day, he will travel back through the stars to intervene. But if you look closer, she knows exactly what a 4-day-old corpse smells like in the Middle Eastern heat. The body is rotting. The air will be unbearable. Jesus ignores the protest, but he does not look up at a distant sky. He does not shout into the clouds. He does not ask God to teleport a soul across a vast cosmic divide. He looks directly into the blackness of the tomb. Lazarus, come out. The silence stretches for a terrifying second. Then, movement. A dead man walks out of a cave. His hands and feet are bound tightly in strips of linen. His face is wrapped in a burial cloth. The sweat of the living mixes with the spices of the dead. He breathes the hot air. Most people read this miracle simply as a demonstration of raw power over a biological end. But look at the mechanics of the rescue. Jesus does not call Lazarus down from a faraway heaven. He speaks to the space immediately in front of him. The dead are not stranded in a distant galaxy. They are resting in the overlapping dimension. They are safely held in the hidden presence of the King. This is the exact comfort Paul is handing to the terrified believers in Thessalonica. They are staring at fresh graves, crying over the dirt. If you look at the ink drying on the papyrus, at the specific political language Paul deliberately chooses to use in the shadow of Caesar. Absolutely terrified, their loved ones have missed the rescue. Paul tells them they have the map completely backwards. When the emperor's Parousia is finally unveiled, the dead do not have to travel back to earth. They are already in the front row. The dead in Christ rise first, because they are already enveloped in the presence that is about to become visible. They will be the first ones to escort the true emperor into the visible world, because they never actually left his presence. Death is not a departure to a distant waiting room. It is a veil. But if the dead are simply resting behind a thin curtain, held by a king who occupies the space right beside us, what does that mean for the people still standing in the dirt? We spend so much of our human experience staring at a silent sky, begging for a rescue helicopter that never seems to arrive, that we completely miss the ground we are standing on. If you look closely at the architecture of your own life, you can probably see the walls of the waiting room you have built. You can hear the rhythmic, mechanical ticking of a clock. In a quiet kitchen, when the house is entirely empty, you can smell the sharp, sterile scent of a hospital corridor. You start to see something the evacuation reading completely misses. He is not writing to tell them how to leave. While you wait for a doctor to step out and deliver a verdict, you can feel the cold, harsh glare of a phone screen, illuminating your face at 3 in the morning. Right when the anxiety becomes too heavy for your jaw and your chest to hold. In those exact moments, the gap between heaven and earth feels like an impossible, stretching chasm. When the grief settles permanently into your bones, the natural human instinct is to look up and ask why the emperor is taking so long to travel through the stars. We want the world to end so the pain will finally stop. We want the skies to part. We want the evacuation to begin. But the truth of the Parousia completely dismantles the theology of the gap. The silence in that sterile room is not an empty void. It is the heavy, unseen presence of a king who refuses to leave. If the dimension of God is not a million miles away, but rather pressed tightly against the very fabric of our physical reality, then the dirt you are standing in right now is not abandoned territory. The mundane, painful, desperately ordinary moments of your life are not a meaningless delay before the real story finally begins. The heavy timber of your home, the calloused skin of your hands, he is writing to tell them who is already here. The return of the king is not a rescue mission from a distant galaxy. The tears that fall into fresh, rocky graves, all of it is saturated with the invisible weight of a God who is already here. He is not asking you to hold your breath in the dark until a cosmic rescue mission arrives. He is asking you to plant gardens in the soil of the waiting room. He is asking you to build, to create, to love, and to mourn with the absolute certainty that the veil between the dimensions is tearing a little more every single day. You do not have to shout across a cosmic void to a distant deity just to be heard. You only have to whisper through a remarkably thin curtain to a God who is standing directly beside you. And when you step back and look at the whole arc of the biblical story, when you trace this thread from the ancient world all the way to the future promise, you realize this was the design from the very first page. The floodwaters rose for 40 days, and a covenant emerged when the sky finally cleared. Moses climbed the mountain for 40 days, and the presence of God descended in the fire. A nation wandered for 40 years, and a new generation walked into the land they were born to inherit. It is a revelation of what has been true the entire time. To feel the weight of this letter, a prophet walked for 40 days to a dark cave, and God met him in the silence between the wind and the earthquake. A city received 40 days to turn around, and it discovered that destruction was not the only outcome. A savior fasted 40 days in the dust, and the kingdom of heaven was revealed to be closer than the ground beneath his feet. And the same savior, risen from the tomb, walked for 40 days to prove that the veil had been torn permanently, and the king was never actually leaving. Same presence, same reality. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the tomb in Bethany, the stone that was rolled back, the man who walked out while still wearing the burial shroud. It reminds me that we don't serve a God who is waiting in a distant heaven to come back and fix the world from the outside. We serve a king who has already occupied the territory, who already holds the keys to the cave, and who is already standing in the very room where you are currently holding your breath. If you are in a season where the waiting feels like it is breaking you, where you are staring at a sky that refuses to speak, you have to stop looking at the sky as if it were a barrier keeping God away, and a future that refuses to clear. Take a moment to look at the ground beneath your feet. You are not standing in a void. You are standing in the middle of a temple. The curtain is thin. The king is here, and he is not preparing to evacuate you from the world. He is preparing to resurrect it. And may the God who has never once abandoned the space between heaven and earth open your eyes to see his presence in the ordinary, the painful, and the beautiful. And may you find the strength to stand firm until the veil is fully torn and the arrival you have been waiting for is finally and forever unveiled. He is dictating a letter over the sound of heavy carts clattering on the paving stones outside. You have to step into the dust of a first-century Roman road. You have to hear the sound of the imperial trumpets, because the answer to the greatest panic of the early church, and the key to how we are meant to live in the world today, is hiding inside a single, radically misunderstood word. A word that changes what it means to wait. We sit in rows of padded chairs. We look at digital clocks glowing on the wall. We wait. Centuries roll over. Decades pass. We check the news. We watch the skies. We read about wars and rumors of wars as if they are bus schedules, looking for the exact arrival time of a delayed transit. We treat the present world like a massive, sterile waiting room. The plastic chairs are uncomfortable. The fluorescent lights are cold. The magazines are outdated. And the doctor is endlessly delayed. This is the modern framework for the end times. It is a theology built entirely on absence. Jesus came. Jesus left. Jesus is coming back. We live in the gap. We exist in the empty middle. We sing songs about flying away. We read books about being left behind. We imagine a vast, infinite, cosmic void stretching between. He is writing to a community of believers living 300 miles north. In the coastal city of Thessalonica, the people he is writing to are grieving, the dirt we walk on, and the throne room of God. Because of this, we view the world as a sinking ship, a vessel taking on water, a doomed structure that we are simply waiting to abandon. We think our primary job is to hold our breath. keep our heads down, and survive the decay until the rescue helicopter finally drops a ladder from the clouds. But this framework creates a crisis of endurance. The waiting becomes exhausting. The delay breeds cynicism. When tragedy strikes, the gap feels wider. A diagnosis arrives in a sterile white room. A marriage shatters. A grave is dug in the hard earth. We look up. The sky is silent. The clouds do not part. The rescue does not come. We assume God is distant, seated galaxies away, completely removed from the cold reality of our pain. We assume we are alone in the waiting room. The time between his departure and his return is not an empty gap. It is an occupied territory, but because we misread the language of the New Testament, we miss the occupation. We impose our modern concepts of space and travel onto ancient texts. We read English translations that talk about a return or a coming, and our brains immediately picture a superhero flying down from the stratosphere. They are digging graves in the hard, rocky soil of Macedonia. They are burying their brothers and sisters, their mothers and sons, and they are terrified. We think in terms of miles. We think in terms of physical distance. The early church did not think this way. When Paul sits in that noisy Corinthian workshop and writes to the grieving believers in Thessalonica, he is addressing this exact panic. They are terrified by the silence. They are terrified by the delay. They need an answer. But Paul does not give them a telescope. He does not give them a timeline. He reaches into the cultural air they breathe. He bypasses religious jargon entirely. He takes a word they hear every single week in the Roman marketplace, a word printed on coins and shouted in the streets, and he uses it to shatter the illusion of distance. Hammers strike stone in the blistering heat. The smell of crushed laurel leaves and fresh paint hangs heavy in the humid air. Citizens rush through the colonnades, sweeping dust from the marble steps of the civic center, their heavy leather sandals slapping rapidly against the pavement. This is first-century Thessalonica, and the city is frantic with preparation. A courier has just arrived on a sweat-lathered horse, bearing a sealed dispatch from the west. A high-ranking Roman dignitary, perhaps the emperor himself, is coming. He is traveling along the Via Egnatia, the massive paved highway that cuts straight through their coastal city. They are not terrified of the Roman magistrates or the local mobs, though the threat of violence hangs heavy in the air they breathe, and his arrival demands absolute perfection. In the Greco-Roman world, an imperial visit is the ultimate political reality. It reorganizes everything. It brings wealth, elevated status, and the terrifying, unpredictable weight of Roman justice. But the citizens of Thessalonica do not simply sit in their homes and wait for the emperor to walk through the stone gates. That would be an unforgivable insult. That would be grounds for immediate punishment. When the imperial procession is finally spotted on the horizon, when the gold eagles of the legion flash in the late afternoon sun, and the heavy bronze horns sound in the distance, the leading citizens do something highly specific. They leave the city. They walk out past the defensive walls, down the dusty highway, into the open country. They meet the dignitary on the road. They surround his chariot with shouts of praise, blending their voices with his massive entourage. And then, together, they turn around. They escort him back into their own city. This ancient political protocol is called a civic reception. The movement is not an evacuation. It is an escort. The citizens do not meet the emperor on the road so he can take them away to live in a palace in Rome. They meet him so they can bring his royal presence directly into the streets where they live, where they work, where they bury their dead. They are terrified of something much worse. They believe the dead have missed the main event. They have been staring at the sky. The meeting outside the gates is entirely designed to establish his authority right here in the dirt and the noise of their everyday reality. Paul knows this protocol. The grieving believers in Thessalonica know it intimately. They have seen the imperial processions. They have heard the horns echo off the mountains. So when Paul writes his letter to comfort them about their dead, when he describes a future moment where believers will be caught up in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, he is not inventing a new theology of cosmic escape. He is completely hijacking the most powerful political imagery of their everyday lives. He is describing a cosmic civic reception. He is telling them that Jesus is the true emperor, and his ultimate arrival will make the Caesars of Rome look like children playing dress-up. The dead are not missing out. They will be in the front row of the escort. But to truly feel the weight of this comfort, to understand what actually happens to the gap between heaven and earth, you have to look at the exact word Paul uses to describe this event, because the word he chooses dismantles the very idea of distance. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 15. Paul is addressing the exact panic of a church staring at fresh graves, trying to offer comfort to people whose hands are still calloused from burying their friends. He dictates this sentence, waiting for their rescued king to come back and fix everything. And now their loved ones are dying before the sky splits open. For this we declare to you by a word from the Lord, that we who are alive, who are left, until the coming of the Lord, will not precede those who have fallen asleep. The English translations almost universally use the word coming. We read that word on the thin, crinkling pages of our modern Bibles, and our modern minds immediately picture physical travel. We imagine a vast cosmic commute, but the word Paul actually speaks in the Greek text is the word Parousia. It is a compound word, built from two distinct pieces of ancient language. The first half is para, a preposition that means beside, alongside, or in close proximity. The second half is ousia, a philosophical term meaning being, substance, or reality. When you push them together, Parousia literally translates to being alongside. It means presence. If something about this realization is stirring up questions you've never considered, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe, because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the English translation creates a devastating illusion. We have built an entire theology of the end times based on the concept of a departure and a subsequent return. They think the distance between heaven and earth is a physical chasm, and they are desperately afraid the dead are trapped on the wrong side of the gap. But the word Paul uses is the exact opposite of absence. In the ancient world, Parousia was the technical term for the physical, weighty presence of an emperor arriving in a city. It was not about the travel time. It was about the overwhelming reality of his substance occupying their space. Paul uses this exact word 14 times in his letters. In 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 10, his critics complain about his leadership style. They say his letters are heavy and forceful, but his bodily presence, his parousia, is weak and unimpressive. He is not traveling in that verse. He is standing right in front of them, breathing the same dusty air, occupying the same dirt floor. His parousia is his physical, undeniable existence in the room. That etymology changes everything. It shatters the theology of the waiting room. When Paul comforts the Thessalonians, he is not pointing their eyes to a distant galaxy, hoping for a rescue helicopter to finally arrive. He is diagnosing a profound misunderstanding of where heaven actually is. The parousia is not a rescue mission from a distant realm. It is the sudden unveiling of a king who has never left the room. To understand how a king can be entirely present without being visibly seen, most people today read this exact same letter and make the exact same assumption. Most people assume Paul is writing to give them a timeline. You have to look at a moment when the barrier between heaven and earth was momentarily pulled back. You have to climb a very specific mountain. 3 men climb a steep, rocky path. Their lungs burn. Their legs ache. The air grows thin. The wind bites at their heavy wool cloaks. They follow a tired rabbi up the slopes of a high mountain. It is an ordinary night in first-century Palestine. Dirt, sweat, dust, stone. They reach the summit. They drop to the hard ground. They fight heavy eyelids in the dark. And then, the fabric of the physical world tears wide open. Jesus does not fly down from the stratosphere. He does not commute from a distant galaxy. He is standing exactly where he was a moment ago. But suddenly, his clothes become blindingly white. Not just clean, not just washed. Brighter than lightning flashing against a midnight sky. His face shines like the noonday sun. Two other figures step into the blazing light. Moses, Elijah, dead for centuries, buried in the past, now standing on the cold rocks, speaking with the rabbi in the present. Most people read this scene completely backward. Most people assume heaven was temporarily teleported down to the dirt. But look at the mechanics of the event. Jesus did not change locations. The mountain did not move. The air did not shift. The curtains simply lifted. The transfiguration is not a geographical arrival. It is an unblinding,